Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
Welcome, episode 5.
Here we go.
Here we go again. So thank you again for listening in. So just a little intro again. So I'm Dan.
I'm James.
And we are here with the Cornwall Property Podcast, where we're here to inspire, inform, hopefully educate you guys on property with a particular focus on the Cornish property market and generally trying to tackle this housing crisis we have in the area.
Absolutely, and just as we say in every episode, and it's happened again this last week, all the wonderful feedback that we have from you lovely people, because without you as our listeners, we wouldn't have the show. So thank you very much again for all your nice, welcoming comments.
Definitely so, definitely so. So let's get cracking. So this episode here, we are going to give you a couple of market updates, just general bits and bobs that are going on in the property sector generally, whether it be legislation, just property-related news, and we've got a little bit of finance update as always, where we can. And then we're going to be looking at some properties that kind of stand out for us over the last couple of weeks, which give opportunities for us to bring some more properties to the Cornwall market that may be derelict or unencumbered or not yet built, but opportunities for us to add properties to the Cornish market to help bridge this gap between people which are looking for properties and where there are properties unencumbered.
Absolutely.
So if I get us started, James, one of the news topics that really caught my eye this week was how the Cornwall Council have just purchased 130 new eco homes.
Wow. So
yeah, it's going to be a massive multi-million pound deal. And essentially, if you're not familiar, there is a developer and a development. So the developers are called EcoBus, and they're doing a development of, well, basically it's a garden village. It's been advertised as and marketed as, and it's just outside of St Austell. It's called West Carclays Garden Village. So on the site, it is going to be, I believe, off the top of my head, it's about 350 new build houses over a phased development over 3 or 4 years. But interestingly, Cornwall Council are stepping their game up, and they're trying to obviously help this housing crisis, and they've actually now agreed to purchase 130 of these properties. So quite a staggering amount. Now, obviously with developments, generally to get through planning, you're looking like on a development this size, you would have social housing as standard. You're going to be required to put some sort of percentage of social housing within that to get that planning through. So initially, this is Cornwall's, well, one of Cornwall's largest kind of developments going on at the minute with such a staggering amount of properties. Now, these are all eco homes, so they're all going to have air source heat pumps. They've got solar panels, which are all estimated that will use 32% of the energy of an average house. So again, quite a staggering difference there, eco-wise and economy-wise. So again, they can see why it's quite a popular area and a popular reason why Cornwall Council might be wanting to snap these up. But originally, only 100 of the homes bought were earmarked for for sale on the open market, and the rest were looking to be affordable. But there's more now than 35% of this development is going to be affordable housing. So interesting to see where it goes. But the key there is Cornwall Council are trying to acquire sites. We've mentioned previously as well that they're looking for sites, larger sites, where they can help bridge this gap themselves. But again, what are your thoughts on this one, James?
I think it's a great scheme, mainly just because it's going to help bridge that gap, like you say, to get those numbers down of 16,000 people on the housing register. So to make some of those homes affordable is really, really good. I also think the eco side is as we've talked previously in other episodes, the whole world's going, green or trying to go green, and the eco side of things is good that they're going to, hit their targets with that. And Cornwall Council are, they've got a target to get X thousand houses, back to the county. So I think it'll be really good that they can start shaving on their numbers as well. So very good for the developers, EcoBoss, lucky them as developers getting the council, because that's good money straight in, guaranteed sales. But it looks like it's a bit of a win-win-win for everybody, really. So it's a good scheme all round, I'd say.
For sure. And these are meant to be staggered over, the handover will be over a 3 and 4 year period, but the first few dwellings or houses will be coming to Cornwall Council within the next few months as well. So it's going to be starting to be phased over. So these 130 aren't all whang, bang, straight in. It is a phased kind of purchase. But yeah, 130 properties that will be coming to the Cornwall housing. So the Cornwall market for social housing. So again, really, really interesting, good to know. Yeah. And whenever you're listening to these, you can find the links to these stories and where we've got them from on the show notes as well. So feel free to look at the show notes and you can actually have a little read and search these stories yourself. Another one that stuck out for me is the landlords now being offered some assistance and some help and support with a COVID Arrears Fund. So those private landlords whom have got rental properties and their tenants have struggled to meet the rental amounts each month, they kind of get a backlog and then they get themselves into quite deep arrears. So it's got to a point, if you imagine a private landlord, this might be their only income perhaps. And if their tenants aren't paying the rent, well, they can't pay the mortgage. And if they can't pay the mortgage, it gets them into quite a sticky and a messy situation. So the government have now offered a lifeline for private housing and landlords, where they're going to put out a £65 million fund to help solve this issue for private rental sector and private landlords. Now, great, that's brilliant news, obviously. Part of me, I don't know about you, Jays, I think this might be a little bit late because the Scottish and Welsh governments have had this in place for a little bit of time now already. And from looking at the figures, when you look at the actual data, how much is we are in arrears or how much rent is actually in arrears, it far exceeds £65 million throughout the country. So 65 million, it sounds great. I don't think it's going to be a touch in the water to help, but it is something. But is it too late? What do you think?
I think it is a bit too late, but there's always that saying, better late than never. I think when we look at, the target of, the huge backlog of people waiting to get housing in Cornwall, if landlords are struggling to meet their mortgages, what are they going to do? They're going to end up selling those properties because they can't meet, or even worse, get repossessed. So the numbers of unencumbered properties through repossessions would go up. So, yeah, it is late, but at least there's something that could come in and maybe save the other properties that, aren't getting any rent in at the moment before they get repossessed where landlords can't afford it. So, Definitely. Yeah, my view is better late than never, but yeah, not great.
You're going to take something, aren't we? For sure.
Absolutely.
What is not clear is on how exactly that is going to be accessed, that funds. I believe it's going to be coming through the local authorities and local councils of your respective areas. But generally, again, that's something to look into. If you're struggling, if you've got tenants that might be in arrears and you're in a bit of a sticky wicket there, please obviously do some research onto that. And again, the link to that article is in the show notes. So they're the two that stuck out for me this week, James. I'm going to fly over to you now. Obviously, looking at a couple of finance stories that stuck out for you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Some really interesting points there. So this is the part of this show where we can, go through some of the finance headlines at the moment that's going on in the news. But as always, and we always say this, do seek professional advice. We're not tax advisors or mortgage brokers, but we're just giving you some of the news and the trends that are going on in the market sector. So one of the headlines in the last week that caught my eye was bridging lending has returned to the highest level since 2018. This is according to data from more than a dozen mortgage packages in the sector. So I appreciate some of the listeners here might not know what bridging lending, but basically it's short-term lending. As we all know, especially for yourself and I, Dan, with our developments, if you're going to borrow money on a short term, it's not very good for the lenders. So the rates are really, really high. But historically, in past years, we've been seeing average rates for about 1% or 0.89 or 0.79%. But now, because more lenders are coming back to the market for bridging, we're seeing really nice rates now of 0.49% per calendar month, which is, staggering, really. That's some of the cheapest bridging loan amounts for interest that we've seen in a very long time. So that's really, really positive. And because those lenders are all coming back to the market, that's why they're all competing against everybody, which is driving those numbers down. So quite often developers, especially with some of the properties that we'll be showing today, where they're needing, full renovation, you want to refinance those within sort of 4 months. There's generally a 6-month rule where you can't do that, but with bridging allows you to do that short-term finance on those properties, which does allow you to do it. So expensive in the short term, but better gain in the long term. So that's really positive.
I was going to say, the thing that really triggers me there as you're repeating that and mentioning that, really interesting. Those figures are pretty impressive when you compare it to what we've been seeing over the last couple of years. But what we'll do is we'll go into a little bit more detail over the next few podcasts in terms of why people might choose to use bridging. People might never have thought about it, but it generally, I think that's a great one for us, and it might even be a question that, as a result of that market update and the finance update, it might be a question that we get in from listeners, no doubt. But no, really, really interesting numbers. I think that's a good sign. Good sign.
Positive.
There's appetite for lending. Yeah,
that's it, and it's just nice. It's competitive, so developers benefit from that. So yes, very good all round there. And another headline we've got is booming equity release market on track record, yearly stats are indicating. So basically, lots of people are refinancing their homes. Why, do we think? Maybe because there's really good opportunity out there at the moment for property purchases, but as we've just talked about, the rates are really, really very, very low. So people are just thinking about, if we want to get that 20, 30 grand out of our property that we've had through capital growth, they've said, now is the time to do it because you can get such attractive rates, which I should come on to in a short moment. But more than £1 billion of property wealth was released in the third quarter of this year, putting equity release market on course for a record year. So basically, people are just really taking advantage of those low rates. And if you're looking to get into property and you're sort of thinking, well, how do I get some money together? Do I go to an investor? Well, that is a way of doing it. It's a bit harder to go off and borrow money, but people are sort of looking, well, what's actually sat right under our own noses, which is the equity in our own properties. And, we can get some really, really good low interest rates at the moment. So that's very, very positive, I think, as well. Finally, we've got another headline here. Personal borrowing for buy-to-let finance sees lots of lenders offering amazing rates. And I've got some very nice figures here, which I've managed to gather up. One of which is the Mortgage Works, very popular mortgage company here, offering a 2-year fixed at, wait for it, 1.39% based on a 75% loan to value. Have you heard figures like that, Dan, recently in the last couple of years?
No, that is good. And again, shows the appetite that's out there. There's a lot of competition out there for lending, isn't there? A lot.
Yeah, big time. So
good sign.
Yeah, these are based on interest only, but as we've talked about previously, for that sort of passive income, when your mortgage is going out, your rent's coming in, you're left with that little bit of money left over. That's going to push those margins right up for you as a property investor, which is great. And in addition to the Mortgage Works offering, we've also got Virgin Money, which have come back with a 5-year fixed at 1.93%, slightly higher, but obviously you get an additional 3 years at that secured rate. Again, that's at 75% loan to value. So very, very nice rates, and there's just such big market stimulation at the moment. Like you say, an appetite for lending, which for investors is, that's one of the key factors, really. So,
and it helps drive the market, doesn't it? It helps people. Well, if lending is available, then we'll look at buying. Simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just generally people are all looking in the market at the moment, waiting for that big question, will interest rates go up? And I think these products at the moment are just going to be snapped up just because people, a bit like when the pandemic was going on, the uncertainty, they're like, look, if I can get 5 years at 1.93%, they're just going to say, yeah, we'll have some of that. And it will be really, really good for investors. So, sure. Yeah. Great rates out there as well. So
brilliant. No, excellent. Very, very interesting and good to see as well. And it gives confidence, doesn't it? It gives confidence in the property market. Fact there's lending available. If you're on the edge of should I, shouldn't I? Well, look, you've literally got one of the main things are money. Can I get money to buy? And the next one is stock. So the stock is then probably the hardest one at the minute, isn't it? Because it is so competitive out there. So those are the two main kind of parts of property investing or purchasing. So it's a case of, have you got any stock? And if you have got stock, well, can I buy it? Well, there's a lot of products out there that are very, very affordable and achievable. So now it's a case of finding that stock.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So next up, James, what we got on?
Yep, this is the part where we bring our properties that we've been scanning over the wonderful market down here in Cornwall. So we've got the first one, which is your bag, Dan. This is the commercial property of the week. Tell me more about it.
Yes.
I like the look of this, actually.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, commercial because it's land. It's land with planning permission on it. So there's planning actually for 10 units here, 10 dwellings. And this is in a small village called 4 Lanes. So it's in between Camborne and Stithians.
Yeah.
Now, it's up for... The interesting thing is this has been up for quite a bit of time. We'll say this year. It started at 600,000. It then went down to 500,000. And it's now recently been reduced again to 320,000. So quite a big drop there in the space of, 10 months or so.
Sounds like motivated sellers to me.
Yeah, it sounds like an interest. But again, it might make it more affordable and actually achievable to get figures that you need to. So just to get a bit of background. So this is a plot. It's 0.3 hectares. So that it generally is, if those aren't familiar, it's about 0.7 acres. So give it just under an acre. But on this, you've got planning for 10 units, 10 semis, I believe. So with that in mind, there are only 8 available because the actual vendor wants to keep hold of 2. So you would be here purchasing the land for 8 units. So there's 8 units, 22 parking spaces. Say it's got outline consent, which is referenced on the actual page. But as you can see here, if you're watching on the video podcast or on YouTube, you can see us here. If I flick through a few pages, you can see some of the plans. If you haven't got the video port and you're listening on a podcast, you can obviously get the link to this property, this land on the show notes. But as you can see, it's a large site, great potential. The fact that they've already got the nod that it should be absolutely fine. It's just the kind of building regs and the actual planning consent now that you're after. But again, opportunities there. Opportunities. Obviously, as you said, James, motivated. How do I know that as well? If you actually download a little app for Rightmove, it's called Property Tracker. You need to do it on Google Chrome. It's a little app and it's a bolt-on. So it's called Property Tracker. And if you download that app and you install it onto your Google Chrome, you can then, when you go onto Rightmove, it has a little a little arrow next to the properties, and it's either a little green arrow, and if it's a little green arrow that's pointing down, it shows that there's been a reduction in price. So I could see when I looked at my bolt-on that this had been reduced 2 occasions prior. So again, 600,000 in January. I think it reduced back down to 500,000 in July, and it's just this month in what we're now in November, it's just been reduced down to 320,000. So again, I can see there's a big drop, and it's a really big drop, big drop of the most recent one. So that shows me that there's an appetite there to get this sold, and they need to get it sold. And again, there could be some opportunity there to add some new properties to the Cornwall market. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity, and certainly I would say funding it would be, previously, as we've just mentioned on those bridging rates, that 0.49 would be quite good for this, because you're going to need quite a lot of cash for sure. But I think, there's great scope for it. Probably not for a first-time investor, for sure. You'd want to have a bit of experience behind you, but I think there could be some really nice numbers at the end of this development for the lucky person.
Definitely. So that's the commercial. James, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I've managed to find a 2-bed cottage in Iluggan in Cornwall, which I think this is a really interesting development, and there's a lot of the hard work which has already been done. And I've got a funny suspicion that the vendor may have run out of money on this one, just because it's also got all the foundations which has been laid for an extension to provide a kitchen and bathroom, where they've already got planning permission to do all of that. So the hard work's been done, all the services have been put in, but the rest of the houses, you'll see from some of the pictures, you've got all the building materials in there. There's been a bit of stud walling that's been going on. You've got first fix electrics, but it's like the project's just run out of money, which not good for the sellers, but I think there could be a deal to be had here. So it's got 2 bedrooms, it's got a nice long front garden, foundations, as I've said, it's got a rear garden, and it's also got off-road parking. So for me, it's definitely going to be one of those houses on the waiting list that need to be brought back to life, and this is a classic family home. So does it sound too good to be true? I don't think so, but there is one thing you need to be aware of on this, which it is cash buyers only, because lenders will always look to lend on something that is habitable, and technically at the moment you've got an extension with a bathroom that doesn't have any walls and no roof on it, but that's where that bridging finance would be able to come into play here, and it would be seen as a fairly major development. But once it's finished, I think you could definitely add a huge amount of value here and create a wonderful family home. What do you think, Dan?
For sure. No, and that's a very, very key point. It's again a good plot, good property. It's got a good fair bit of land on the front and the back end, to be fair, which is where they've obviously built this extension to. Still quite a bit of work to go on the back, but again, as you say, the hardest bit's done. The foundations are out the ground. It's just more a case of now, but again, timber frame could go up quite quickly. And as you say, the key here is it's not currently mortgageable. And what determines a mortgageable property or not? Essentially, it's whether or not it's got kitchen and bathrooms. Can someone live in there? Yeah. Doesn't matter the standard. Can someone live in there? And currently, it has neither. So that's why it has to be a cash only purchase. Which again, great shout. So again, it's a property currently empty, needs to be brought to the market, and that's something that again is far more affordable. What's it? 150k purchase price currently. And I think it's a good shout if someone's interested, and a lot of the hard work might already have been done.
Especially with those foundations, because extension, as you and I both know, and for the listeners, I'm sure, that is the hard bit, getting those foundations put in the services. So now you just need block work, timber frame going up, and you're away.
Get it watertight. But again, must make sure you do your research, because you don't know who's done the foundations, you don't know if it's done right. Maybe that might be a reason they're getting rid. So definitely get yourself a survey on that. That's without a shout. Definitely something I'd recommend.
Absolutely.
So that is it for today's podcast. That's episode 5. That's our market update and our property picks of the week. So again, thank you so much for listening and joining us. And if you'd like to listen again, we will be back next week for the Ask Dan and James episode, where you will get your property questions into us. James, how can people do that?
Yeah, quite simply, they go to www.cornwallpropertypodcast.com. As always, they scroll right to the bottom and they can put in their questions, and they can reach out to us on there. Failing that, if you want to get involved on social media, they can also go to our Facebook page and they can make contact directly with us there on messages. But we're always here on the other end waiting for your comments.
Happy to serve where we can. But yeah, thank you ever so much. Any questions, get in touch. And until next time, that's bye from me.
Bye from me as well. Bye-bye now.